everybody, and welcome to the channel. My name is Christa Hamilton, and I go by Practical Astros on the internet. And the internet is where I met Sammy. He and I did a reading exchange a year ago. I didn't realize it was that long, but he and I have stayed blue sky buddies since. And I invited Sammy to talk about dispositor trees. So, Sammy, the mic is yours, and thanks again for talking about this with me.
No problem. Thank you, Krista. Yeah, I can't really believe that it's been about a year since we did the uh reading swap. So dispositor trees. This is a technique that I hold very near and dear. It's one of the first things that I do whenever I look at a chart. I remember that it was one thing that I used when in our reading swap, and it's dispositor trees. We all know what a dispositor or rulership is. It's like planets rule signs, and most often than not, they're not in their own home sign, right? So we have to look at the planet ruling that sign to see, okay, what resources it does it get. But I like to take it a step further to see how far can we go? What is the what can be the root of the sometimes the issue, or like blockages, or like if we want to achieve a certain thing, where does it start? Where does it all start? And dispositor trees is a very visual technique that lets you very much see what is going on in a chart, where the resources start and where they end. Um, when I use it, I only use traditional rulership. I find it a little bit cleaner, a little bit tidier. Um, my conceptualization of the rulerships is that the zodiac is a uh, very connected to the terrestrial plane. So the seasons, how our environment, and anything past Saturn is out of sight. We can't see it directly. So it's a little bit more subliminal, a little bit more in the collective sphere rather than the like terrestrial sphere, if you get what I mean. It's if it's less they're not as grounded as the traditional rulership. So that's what I'm using today. Um, so
I had a
um,
conversation with a friend about this recently, and
yeah,
I was like, the outer planets feel kind of like the disinterested uncles at the family reunion. Like they're there.
yeah,
You
yeah,
may never see them. You know that they exist. They can really help you out if you need it. But for the
yeah,
most part, you just annoy them. That's how the outers kind of feel feel
yeah.
like to me.
Absolutely. And I feel like they're annoyed uncles that you only hear through their wives. Like they you only hear them through the wives, and
Or through their own lore, like some stories of the past, yeah. Have
exactly. And
great reputations for better or worse.
exactly. And usually most of the time you don't really feel personally the outers unless they are connected to a personal planet. Because a personal planet, as the name suggests, they are personal. So they are more connected to you and your life immediately. So that unless the outers are connected to them somehow, it just feels a little bit disconnected, you know? Um, and for the purpose of this technique, the outers will always be at the end of a chain. They will never continue a chain or be in the middle of the first. So, yeah. And also, it also cleans it up because that means that all all signs have only one ruler instead of some having two. And uh, it kind of eliminates a bit of confusion as to which one should I look at. So hence why I construct the trees that I do the way I do. So shall we get going and
Yeah,
look at one?
yeah.
So here, so I've just pulled some charts from the ephemeris that I thought, okay, this represents it quite well. This was earlier this year in August. You can look at this both from a personal point of view in your own chart, or you can look at a transit to see like what what part of the sky is being kind of the boss, leading everything else, having the holding the torch, so to speak. And in August earlier this year, we had the sun as the final dispositor. We probably most of us have probably heard the term final dispositor. It's the planet that doesn't answer to anyone, but everyone answers to him. And I've gotten a couple of keywords that I think tends to represent this kind of tree. Uh, Focused resources, unified, less separation, reliance. So in this chart, everything boils down to Leo and the third house. Everything comes back there. If the third house is not satisfied, if that sun is not happy in that third house, then everything else kind of stagnates. So the way I see it is almost like a chain of ponds, is that if where this in this instance the sun is the top pond, and if you if the little waterfall is blocked, then no water will get to the lower ones. Um, and now you might wonder, like we have the sun here at the very bottom, and then it goes up to Mercury. So any planet in the same sign as the sun would answer to the sun. That's just how it is. And now Mercury goes to Uranus, but also to the moon. I see now that I made a mistake. It should have this one. I put it at the wrong time. It should have been in Gemini here.
No,
So
it's on. Yeah, let's just pretend the moon's in Gemini. I was like, where?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I picked the wrong time of day, but it should have been in Gemini. Let's imagine it's in Gemini.
Okay.
So um, both Jupiter and Venus would answer to the moon because they're in the moon sign. Then Mars answers to Venus. Mars is in Venus's sign. And then we have Saturn and Neptune in Mars's sign, and then Pluto in Saturn's sign. So this is a relatively very clean and tidy tree. It's very straightforward. So it means that like if you want to if you feel like you can't access your funds, your uh your place of happy, your creativity, um, you might want to look at, is your money doing okay? Is your money doing okay? Is everything all right there? Um, if not, is does it mean that like your personal focus? Have you been neglecting yourself? Like, and if yes, does it mean that you might maybe have neglected self-care? I see the third house kind of like I have one of what's it called, Dimitra George's books, and in on the third house, I remember reading a line saying it's about um, like personal rituals.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
uh, personal rituals and things that you do to bring yourself joy and comfort. Remember, third house is the joy of the moon, so anything that brings you personal comfort. So do you feel like you are shining in your own skills? Do you feel like you are bringing enough focus to your own personal rituals? If no, then this little chain is blocked.
Mm-hmm. So just to kind of kind of to make sure that I'm getting it, if you're say this is your birth chart and the
Yeah,
moon was in Gemini in the first house,
yeah,
and so you're like, I don't have a lot of joy. I'm not, I'm not having as much fun as I think I should. What's going on? And so you look at kind of that house of fun and creativity and creativity for pleasure's sake, and Mars is in there. And so it's like, well, Mars is in there. Mars answers to Venus. Mars is disposited by Venus, and Venus is in Cancer. And so like considering like your own finances, your own skills, like, am I doing something that is like supporting me? And if the moon is in Gemini, the moon rules Cancer. So then Venus then has to go talk to the moon, be like, hey, what's up? Mars is unhappy in the fifth house.
Yeah.
And then the moon in Gemini would then go back to Mercury, which answers to the sun because both of them are in Leo. I think it's a nice way to kind of almost like find that thread of disorder so it can go to that root problem, which having a final dispositor makes it helpful. Because it is like a kind of the clean line to get to this one instead of dual or split trees, or two trees that kind of may be in conflict with each other.
Yeah.
But there's also the idea that if there is a final dispositor and it's not well placed or it's badly aspected, then you're kind of constrained fundamentally, that there is some blockage. So like, can you just talk a little bit about that? It is fully resourced, but there is consideration with its position in the chart, right?
Yeah. So what I find interesting about like planets that are in their own signs is that they sometimes get so self-sufficient to the point where like, yeah, you can sort yourself out, you
Yeah.
know? Like you don't give it the focus that it needs. And I mean, it's a Leo sun. You don't give it focus and you're a
Yeah.
bit grumpy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so um yeah, so it's sometimes, life happens and things pull us in a lot of different directions. So maybe you are in a point in your life where you have a lot of sixth house focus, where work. And funny enough, in this chart, the sixth house is ruled by that Mars in the fifth. So it means that you need to make sure you have fun to be able to work. You find so a to really this is a very simplified way, but when I struggle to like how do I conceptualize the ruler of a house in another house, you find your work in fun. So the planet that rules that house, you find it in another house. So therefore, you find how you can access your work in your place of fun. So in your place of hobbies. Um, so and if it means that you're like work, 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 no fun, okay, then you've missed that point already. But then maybe it's you are working so hard because you don't have dedicated enough time for the skills and for your personal care enough. So because these are also in square, sixth house and the third house. So you work, 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 neglect self-care. So you've worked so much that you neglect self-care, and therefore that root cause of the third house, which is like almost makes the whole chain crumble in a sense. Crumble might be a a harsh way to put it, but like makes it difficult for that energy to, flow. The I hope that answers that question.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
nice. So this is I would say that this is not a very common thing to have a final dispositor. Um, you find charts that do have them, but most of the time you tend to have splits. Um, if you ever feel like, oh, I have two parts of my life and they're quite separated, that might be the reason that you have two trees, maybe three trees, or like in my chart, I have two separate trees, and sometimes they do feel at a tug of war, like they are just separated, and there arises another challenge of integration. So I was thinking of looking at another chart that displays two different types of trees at the same time,
Great.
which is a mutual reception and a singleton. Well, this one is kind of a singleton, kind of not, because it has Pluto that it goes to, but because of what we said about the outers are kind of meh, you know, they are not as personally felt, and Pluto in this chart doesn't make really that many aspects to many other planets. So I would almost say that this Mars is a singleton. So what does this say? Um, for this chart, for this tree, which is a mutual reception tree, I wrote interconnectedness, cooperation, negotiation, and integration. So a lot of shins there. Um, and it's basically we have Sun and Venus, a mutual reception when two planets have basically swapped home signs. We have Venus in Leo and Sun in Libra. And even though that Libra is fallen, in some ways it's almost stronger because of it, because it's like it is getting it's getting input from more places, you know? And when that Venus is suffering, it can lean on when the Sun is suffering, it can lean on Venus to look for resources because they need to work in tandem. So that Venus is, even though it doesn't really have dignity, it doesn't necessarily have debility either, you know? Um, yeah.
It's like shared resources. It's like they're both, the sun has fallen there, and Venus is what peregrine, but
Mm.
but because they're in each other's domiciles, it's that, like, that in itself is a little bit of strength in numbers. Like, again, resources through cooperation, I think, just to use one of your words, one of your shuns.
Yes. So basically the Venus and Sun, how I see this kind of tree is that they need to agree. Venus and the Sun need to agree to make things work. If Venus for some reason does not agree and is not happy, then that Sun is not going to be happy either, and therefore the rest of the tree is not going to be happy either. It's not going to feel that flow. So now you might wonder what I have done here. You would probably think that uh, that this Mercury should answer to Venus. However, when it comes to dispositor trees, the Sun is receiving the resources directly from Venus and then distributing it to the rest of the sign.
Based on
So,
its position to the Venus.
based on its position being um, in Libra. So the way you construct a dispositor tree is like who's getting who's Venus talking to more directly.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, Venus is talking to the Sun more directly, and then because the Sun and Mercury are in the same house, then the Sun is relaying everything that Venus is saying to Mercury. So
Okay.
imagine they're in the same house. So imagine Venus is coming over and the Sun is opening the door, and whatever Venus is telling the Sun is telling Mercury. So they're still getting the same resources, but whatever the resources uh, Mercury wants from Venus is filtered through the Sun.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, so, and then we see basically that yes, you have the Sun, but then you have this Mercury's doing a lot of heavy lifting, going having to talk to the moon, to Jupiter, to Saturn, and all of these guys. So Mercury in Libra here sure is a great mediator for the rest of the chart. I
That's
uh,
on brand for Libra Mercury.
right. So sometimes you also need to check, okay, yes, you have these guys bottom of the tree, like you would say at the root of the tree. They are hold the stability, but sometimes it might have something might happen in the middle of the tree. So something might happen to Mercury. Like you might not be able, you might not be speaking your mind. You might not be mediating as much as you want, and not there might be too much chaos around, so that creating chaos in your head, which means that the rest of this tree might struggle to get the resources they need, you know? Um, and like sometimes you might have a stronger focus in the middle of a tree because there's more planets answering to one planet there. So it's about when looking at a tree, it's really important to look at like where do you see a lot of energetical um almost congestion? Where could a lot of congestion happen if there's not enough flow, if you're not satisfying that part of the chart enough? Um, Equally, so this is a mutual reception tree. And then we have this little guy. This, I call it the singleton because it's only Mars and Pluto. Um, you do have a split, but because Mars is the only personal planet in this tree, and Pluto is not making a lot of aspects to any other planets, I would call this as a singleton tree.
Basically, like Pluto does answer to Mars, but doesn't really, the rest of the planets aren't really considered because of the lack of tight aspects. So
Yeah,
Mars and other trees would just be kind of sitting on its own. So you would
yeah,
call it a
yeah,
singleton for that. Okay.
yeah. And because the outers are not ruling any signs, if we were to take them out, it would just be Mars left here. Yeah. Um, so the way I would describe this one is more separation, isolation, and self-reliance, which is very
Mars and Aries.
very very Mars and Aries. But these are keywords I have for this type of tree, which is
Yeah.
I would say uh this is probably the stereotypical expression of this type of tree is a Mars and Aries, is that like just want to do its own thing, want to just be left to its own devices. But the thing is that I should have also added in the word disconnect because it can feel disconnected from the rest of your life because you just have, it only has resources there. It's not taught really giving resources or giving input anywhere else apart. You can have aspects that is communication or like that's relationships, but like, is it actually talking to any
Like for
other part?
this, it would be like, this person has a life and then they have a job and they're good at their job. Their job doesn't really, it doesn't cross over into their social life or their family, or it's just like, it's just a job and they're perfectly fine at it, but there's no bleed over between job and the rest of their humanity.
What's interesting here is I think because of this T-square here. So we're getting into aspects now, which is not this positive series, but I know this person, and what's really interesting is the other way around. I think it's like that sometimes if it's not giving resources and allocating things, it becomes too concentrated that it almost bleeds out.
Ah, okay.
So for them, every aspect of their life is their career.
Right. Yeah.
So to the point where it's almost it can overshadow. It's so loud that it almost overshadows other parts of their life. So with a singleton tree, it's kind of a catch 22. It's so resourced and it's so like self-reliant that it's just like almost bulldoze everything else, which is the energy of this is very Mars and Aries, very masculine, very out, very loud, right? And then you have this Venus and Sun and this over here, which is a lot more social, and it really is. I know this person, and it's like community, money, working from home, but also like when they're not doing that, they are literally away, out, and it's not connected to their community. They'll like when they actually go on and do gigs, they are it's not connected to the community. And they do that, they feel fired up, they come home, and then it's just cool. Next day, new thing. And it's just like, these two worlds don't see each other as readily, you know? Um, so even though they kind of bleed into each other, it's like a balancing act between them.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, this is a mutual reception and singleton chart. Um, and obviously this is just looking at the dispositories, it's just one way of organizing a chart. I like to use these ways to organize the chart to really like, because a chart has so many symbols, so many lines, so sometimes it can, when you look at it, you're just like, I don't know where to start. And this is my personal way, and I really like this technique to know where to start, you know?
Yeah, I think that's so important. In the last couple of days, I've just been thinking about the concept of orientation and just the etymology of the word. And it's to face east, it's to face the Orient, it's to face the place where the sun rises, where the ascendant sign is like the breath being breathed into that sign as you were born, the potency of the eastern horizon. And to orient yourself, you find where you are in relation to at least one place. And then from there, you can kind of circumambulate around to find the other directions, but you have to start somewhere. And so I think a dispositor tree is a great way to orient, to find wherever you are in relation to one place, find the dispositor, and then you can look at aspects and the condition of the rest of the chart and what's going on with the transits to the chart. I mean, there's just so much to astrology that it takes lifetimes upon lifetimes to understand, much less integrate. So finding one technique, something like this, is a great way to find that one point of the compass to then start orienting around and navigating around the chart.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I find, just as you said, orientation is really important. I grew up in Sweden, and one thing that we would do every single year is something called orienteering. We would basically, and the word orienteering comes from Swedish, actually. Um, we would be given a map with some points on it and be told, okay, go out into the woods, find the posts, and come back at the end of the day. And
Good luck.
and we would just need to find it. And I thought I was never good at it, but it just made
It's good
me,
practice.
huh?
It's good practice, though, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it just makes me think of that like a chart feels like a big forest where you're just like surrounded by so many different things. You don't know what direction to go, but then, small things. There are certain techniques that you can look at, which is like, um, do you know where the coast is? And you can check where the wind is going. That, to me, dispositor trees is like one of these techniques to find your direction.
Yeah, the
Just
dispositors trees is the forest from which you're searching through.
yeah, exactly. So speaking of directions, sometimes you have a case where things get a lot more scattered, and that's where you get a circle. And a circle tree is, as my keywords I have put down suggest, it's a lot more all over the place. I've said scatteredness, slowness, negotiation, and crowded. So I'm very sure that English has a uh very similar saying. In Swedish, we have a saying that roughly translates to many chefs makes for bad soup.
Hmm. Too many cooks in the kitchen. That's what we
Yeah,
say.
exactly.
Yeah.
Too many cooks in the kitchen. So basically, this kind of chart has that feel of too many cooks in the kitchen, where we have here is Sun, Moon, and Mars, they are in tandem. It's like imagine you have the mutual reception, but it's none of them, all of them wants to have the say, wants to t say, this is what we're gonna do. And you have three people, and like two might vote yes and one might vote no, and then but you need to have three yes to be able to do something, you know? With with two people, it's easier to kind of to like work together, as a pair. Um, you know, what's the saying about like two makes a pair and three makes a crowd or something like
Hmm.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is kind of the feeling of a circle dispositor tree. And incidentally, this one, Mars and Moon and the Mars are not, they don't give resources to any other planets.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will have a case where you have just it's less of a tree and more like a mycelium,
So
where
can
it's just,
we describe the chart? We have Mars that's in Cancer, so it looks to
yes,
the moon. The moon's in Leo,
yes.
which looks to the sun. The sun's in Scorpio, which looks back at Mars. So it's like that. It's like this eddy in the side of the river. It just kind of gets stuck, circling onto itself. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to do that.
Yeah.
So exactly, we have this circle of um, we have Mars in Cancer answering to the Moon in Leo, which is answering to the Sun in Scorpio, which is answering to the Mars in Cancer. And this is a case of, they all need to be in agreement, and it's more the more people there is, the more difficult it is to have everyone agree with each other, especially when you have like the two lights and Mars. It's just like, they you have two that are strong-willed and one that's just like, I'm not comfortable with this. Um, and then, but the thing is about this chart is that you have all of the planets, the rest of the planets, they are answering to the sun. So you have Mercury in Scorpio, and then you have, um, let me see, you
So
have,
Mercury is getting the message through the sun because the sun is looking at Leo where the moon is,
yeah,
which is looking at Mars in Cancer, which is looking back at the sun. So it's like then that's why the sun then becomes like the mouthpiece for the crowded conversation between the sun, the moon, and Mars. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah. It's almost like the sun wants to provide resources for the rest of the chart, but then it has Mars and the moon in each either ear, and it
Mm-hmm.
can't hear itself think. It's just like,
Yeah.
I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then the sun has also its own thoughts of like, I want to do my own things, and they all need to agree. So the sun there is kind of has to mediate between all of them and be like, okay, cool, let's just, take a beat. Uh, but and then things kind of that's why I put down negotiation, because there's a lot of negotiation happening between these planets. But also slowness, because you have, compared to a mutual reception where they are like they are buddies. They are giving and taking from each other. Here it's like the sun is giving to the moon, but it's taking from Mars. The moon is getting from the sun, but giving to Mars. And the Mars is getting from the moon and giving to the sun. So it's just like
It's like
a
if you
lot
have
of
ever worked in a cooperative before, of any form, it's like you are dependent on everyone kind of um, coming to mostly in agreement. No one
yeah,
is ever really happy.
exactly. And it's very much that kind of feeling of that of you have to really make sure that every one of those planets are happy in some way. And how might this manifest in the chart? Well, we have a chart with a Aquarius rising, which puts the Mars in the sixth house, the Moon in the seventh, and Sun in the 10th. So for this chart in particular, you have career, work and routine, and partnerships. all connected. So this could be a very classic thing of like schedule clashes between you and your work partner, leading to um, like very stagnant progression in career progression, you know? So that is a very like simple delineation. It could manifest in many different ways, but that is my intuitively, that's the first thing I see. So it could also be like you your work partner gets ill all the time because you have a fallen Mars in the six, because it's also co-workers, you know. So it is very much giving like co-workers partnerships and contracts that might be very unstable, that's leading to slow career progression, which is if you have slow career progression, um then that makes doesn't it's not the end of the world, but maybe you are at a point in your life when you kind of need to up your finances, like your economy, you know, and you need that career progression. So that means that that Mercury can't speak to the rest of the chart. It's answering to the Sun, being in Scorpio as well. It can't communicate to the rest of the chart, to that to the Jupiter in Gemini in the fifth. So because you don't have that career progression, you're putting so much effort and focus into your career, you're neglecting your fun and your hobbies and your creativity.
Like when you
Uh,
talked about like not being able to have the flow, like if there's any sort of stagnation and buildup and pressure with those houses, with those planets, then
yeah,
the abundant flow doesn't really go down to that Gemini house in the fifth. So it's like the expression of fun isn't really fed by the flow of it all because there is that stagnation between the
exactly.
Scorpio, Cancer, and Leo houses. So we've got Jupiter and Gemini. It answers
Yeah,
to that Mercury and Scorpio.
yeah,
Um, but then from there, then Jupiter seems like it speaks to a lot of the rest of the planets in the chart.
yeah, exactly. So you have a case where maybe the for this individual it would be like they they've been neglecting their hobbies and their fun and what brings them joy in life, which means that they are not seeing their friends as much because it's you have Venus in Sagittarius, which is answering to that Jupiter. So it means that they might not be seeing their friends in the community, which most likely is where they it was community through hobbies, you know, most likely. And then um and then you have that Jupiter, that Saturn in Pisces that's answering to that Jupiter. And that's why I was talking about like you want that this person might want uh financial progression, like they want to up their finances, and it's they are so focused on that that 10th house, the 10th, 7th, and 6th house, that it never really actually makes it to the second. It's like there's stagnation there, so it never actually manages to trickle down to the second house where the Saturn is sitting. Um, and I find it like I find this kind of especially this kind of loadout of a tree very intriguing, very interesting because it's when you have a client or see a chart and speak to a person with this kind of chart, you have to really talk about integration with them. Like you have to make sure that things are integrated. And I would also say have a lot of patience
Yeah.
with these individuals. Um, so yeah, these are three different charts, three different loadouts that I had prepared. Um, Obviously there are loads of different other configurations. And in my own chart, I have a Mars tree and a Venus tree, and they do speak to each other, but in opposition, which is they really govern two very different areas. So when you look at a tree, you can kind of create a theme for a tree. So for this tree, it's very much duties, duties, aspiration, and partnership tree that trickle down to funnies and that which supports your life. Um, this previous tree, this previous one, I would say it's almost like a split between like working from home and community and actual career. So you have kind of a split there. So you have one career part and one like home part. Um, while in this chart, it's more like your person, like very much personal growth and personal, it's very much everything is very personal. You have a very strong focus on the first quadrant of the chart, so first, second, and third, which is all very like the first house being representing you and your direction in life. The second house, whatever supports that, and the third is also supporting it, but in a different way, that which brings you comfort and joy and like mental stimulation, mental stimulation, skill stimulation, physical stimulation, things that makes you feel good, you know?
Yeah, that self-care. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say this is almost like a self-care tree, you know? So yeah, the whenever when you create a tree, try and zoom out and see, okay, what is the leading theme? Can you create a sentence for this tree? Can you create an almost like an archetype? Don't just stop at the archetype, but it's a great way to start. Like it's almost like a leading star. Like what phrase can we always come back to ground the tree?
And I like that as as the dispositor, if there is one, especially, but whatever the dispositors are, that being the type of root system. So is there
Yeah.
like one really strong taproot? Does it bifurcate, or is it like mycelium, like you said,
Mm.
because I think that there are, I mean, like we are, we're given our lot in life, literally, like the seven
Yeah.
hermetic lots,
Yeah.
and the no chart is inherently good or bad. It's like these are the parameters which you can kind of negotiate your fate and free will within.
Mm.
And I think that thinking about them in the visualization of a tree, like for this one, having that really strong taproot, like if anything challenges that Leo in the third house, it can be devastating for the rest of your chart, the rest of your life, like all these things. So it can be incredibly impactful when something challenges it. But
Yeah.
as a Mars ruled person, like, if you survive the challenge, then you're just that much stronger. So it can be like very fortifying to grow from those challenges and make that taproot even more anchored. And then having a bifurcated tree, having mutual reception, having that, which is what I have. I have Venus in Cancer and the Moon in Taurus, so they have this mutual reception, and it bounces back and forth between the seventh and the ninth. And so and I see the Moon and Venus in other ways outside of dispositor trees being the negotiators in my life. So it's not, I think you can find your dispositor rulers in other ways through other, it's like with anything in astrology, you can usually find it a couple of times from different perspectives. And I think it's just a nice way to visualize the chart itself. And if you're looking at your own chart or just wondering like, why can't I not get well? Why am I always sick? Like, why do I keep getting injured, or why do I keep having accidents? Like, if there's something anomalous that's happening, I think using dispositors is a fresh way to look at it if you haven't looked at it before, to kind of, follow the white rabbit to this solution maybe, or this revelation that could inform. You could take all this route to kind of get back to that sun and Venus mutual reception in this chart if this is yours. So it's a great technique to anchor it, because having something that is anchored and using traditional rulerships to make it simple, to make it clean, so that there is kind of a final boss for every single sign is helpful, because you do have that structured ruler, and then you can just full stop have that ruler instead of it being Venus Neptune, like which one should I choose, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent technique as a grounding exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can like this is simply the start. You can add other things to it. So by looking at the houses, like in this instance, yes, you have Venus, Sun, but if you were to swap out all of the planets with houses, you can see, okay, it's the second and fourth. Fourth going to fourth, and then fourth going to 12th, and then 12th going to sixth.
Yeah.
And so it kind of tells you, okay, for me to act, so for this person, for them to really uh, heal physically, they need to isolate. They really need to spend time alone. And equally, they need to talk about it. They need to talk
Oh, yeah.
about it, negotiate, and they need to actually express this. Mind you, the 12th and 4th, they are part of a trine
Yeah.
uh, in the chart. So it's like fourth is privacy. They need to talk in privacy to be able to feel like they can go and isolate and heal, to heal their body, and then if their mental health is suffering, their physical health is suffering.
Yeah.
And equally, they need to have that time to be in private, to be by themselves, or like just at home. Um, it's like this is very much a classic one of you have a homebody and you have a very public persona in one person. Um, and they are kind of in opposites because you have that Mars and the Sun in opposite to each other. So and then obviously you can add the nodes, you can add the lots, and you can add the ascendant and descendant. So in this chart specifically, you can see if I were to add in the ascendant and descendant, we see that to get to the ascendant, we have to go, okay, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, ascendant. But to get to the descendant, you have Sun, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, then descendant. So it's a much longer track. So there's more points of failure to get to the descendant. Whilst, for instance, in this chart, you have the ascendant all the way over here, but the
Yeah.
descendant right here, right
Yeah.
next to the
And if you talk about resources, like having direct resource from the ruler, it's like you're
yeah,
getting it a little bit more concentrated or less
yeah,
pilfered by whoever handed it, whatever the courier that handed it off.
yeah,
So it seems like less diluted to get it more directly. Like Mercury is more supported getting it from the sun than Saturn is getting it through Jupiter, through Mercury from the sun.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I love the idea of looking at it from the houses, almost like designing a complex, like a compound. Like, what's the entrance? Who do you talk to first?
Hmm.
And then you go into the atrium of this planet that leads off to this wing that you can get to this planet. So to get to Saturn and Pluto, you have to go through, it's like in the back of the compound,
Yeah,
way, way far away from the entrance.
yeah.
Um, I like that concept a lot.
And it's almost like a game of telephone in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that, like, with resources. So
Mm-hmm.
the Saturn will never hear, even though they are in the signs of trine to each other in the chart. When it comes to simple resource allocation, Saturn will never get um like the resources purely directly from the sun, like it will always be filtered through Mercury and Jupiter, which means that any career type things, any like, oh, I want to really shine in the thing that I'm doing career-wise, it will always be filtered through a more cerebral sphere. And then that cerebral sphere will, they need to believe that they're enjoying it
Hmm.
to then be like, okay, this is life supporting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's you can look at it from many different ways. When I build trees, I usually add in the lots and the nodes as well to kind of see like where do these points end up, in the chain. And by like making sure that I would say a sensitive point of failure, where if you have a planet that is giving off a lot of basically talking to a lot of other planets, then make sure that that planet is happy, you know? Make sure that that planet is happy. Of course, you've got to start at the root, but if the root is happy, but then somewhere along the chain you have like, I wouldn't say a weakness, but like a neglect, you have neglected it in some way. Like your career, your partnership, and your work is all going great, but you're not having fun. You know, that means that regardless of if you want to have friends, if you want to feel like your life is supporting you and actually you are getting the money that you want and you feel comfortable in life, then you need to make sure that that fun, that that the joy in life, your hobbies, that you're actually giving time to your hobbies, the things that bring you like joy for the simple fact that it brings you joy.
And so you would look at that point, you would look at the house to find the topics to the nurture, support, make
Yeah.
sure aren't overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the topic of the house.
Yeah. So it's like because I think with astrology, there's always as an astrologer, you have to have a lot of negotiation with yourself, what to look at, what should I
Yeah.
be interpreting. So here, yes, we are tracking the planets, but eventually, if you want to like get to the root of it, yeah, need to look at the house it's in. Like, where is it operating from, So it's like you can't just look at the planets and say, okay, that's it. I think the ordering it by the planets is a great way to just organizing things, but you should really look at which houses they are in as well.
Yeah, it's like the as above is like organizing it by the planets, but with like so below, so within sort of a
Yeah.
thing, and actuality and practicality. Where is it showing up in a way that you can negotiate with it and support it? I like that idea of finding that overwhelm, that potential overwhelm.
Mm.
And because in this chart, you might not initially look at Jupiter in the fifth, be like, oh, that looks fun. It's like, but is it actually having fun there?
Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, it's debilitated. It's in
Yeah.
that it's retrograde, so maybe it's overwhelmed. I mean,
Yeah.
Jupiter, I don't know about you, but when Jupiter was in Gemini, things were a bit overwhelming.
Yeah. I've got Jupiter in Virgo. So that was a different experience for me having it exiled and squaring.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. Support those exiled Jupiters, y'all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so yeah, I think it's looking at dispositor trees helps you find points of failures. As mentioned, it helps you find um sometimes places that you need to give a little bit more attention, like who is talking to the most people? Like, yeah, Jupiter is talking to Mercury to be like, hey, can I get the resources I need to do my thing? But then how is Jupiter doing in there? Like when it comes to debilitated planets, I don't like to think of them as bad. They are struggling more, that is true. But you have to be a lot more creative with them because you have to find different ways of um, working with that planet. So that um, Jupiter in Gemini in the fifth, to me, just is very like need to try out a lot of different things and see what sticks. Um, with regard and see like, is this is this something I believe in? Is this something I, can vibe with? Is this something that like I can support, you know?
Yeah.
And they need to try a bunch of different things out. Um, and it's in the realms of fun, of hobbies, of like partying, of also of children and like of sports. So maybe this is a person who's like that would try out a lot of different sports until something sticks.
Yeah, that friendly competition, that back and forth, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Especially with Jupiter in there, because I know that Jupiter has to do with teamwork and like brotherhood and the like camaraderie, you know? So it feels like that Ju are you playing a team sport? Are you are you allowing time to just like, go out, go and do play that sport that you enjoy, or has work been taking out too much time? Because that happens, and these are very real situations, where it's like one area of our life might take up so much of our attention that other parts are neglected.
Yeah, and then you can consider the other things. I see a fixed ascendant, and so the rest of the angles are fixed. And sometimes making a change and just trying something out for a short period of time is harder for fixed ascendants to do, because it's like, if I choose this and I'm committing to it, and there's kind of like a false fidelity with fixed risings. And an advice to fellow fixed risings is like, sometimes you can just do things just for a little while. You don't have to be committed to it as a part of your personality for the rest of your days. And having like Jupiter there in the fifth, I think it's like, why don't you just try, yeah, just try some sort of like community team sport for a season, and just do it for the enjoyment, sake alone. And it doesn't have to be any more than that. It can break up that fixity of a fixed rising. So I think finding maybe a potential weak spot or overwhelmed spot, and then considering the other parts of the chart, as ways to just give yourself the advice or get it from an astrologer. Which kind of pivots me to you and your practice. Can you talk a little bit about your practice? I know that you use these in preparation for readings to kind of anchor yourself and orient yourself, but can you talk a little bit about your practice as an astrologer, and if you want to show people your website, and we can kind of wrap it up with what you
Yeah,
do as an astrologer?
absolutely. So I like to use a mix of modern and traditional techniques. The traditional techniques I mostly use are annual perfections, and sometimes I look at it like releasing. It's something I'm still working on. It's a very big topic, so it's I think I need more data to collect there. But I use a combination of Placidus and horse sign for the purpose of this talk today. I only used horse sign because it makes things a little bit neater. And but the way I conceptualize it is uh I remember listening to a podcast by Kepler College a while ago, and I can't remember the episode, but basically one of the guest speaker was asked, "So what house system do you use?" And she replied, "Well, that's a bit of a s- I think she said that's a bit of a silly question for me because I use whatever house system a technique was developed in. And that kind of just made something click for me that just like why pick one when you like with electional astrology, you would usually use uh Regiomontanus.
Yeah, like horary. Yeah.
Yeah, horary,
Yeah.
that's the one. Um, and what's it called? And with Placidus, I purely look at that from a psychological point of view, because that's what it was primarily used for. Whilst with whole sign, I look at that more like as an external driver, what external things are happening more so that affect the psychological and vice versa. So I tend to look at the and use this um house comparison in AstroSeek, where you can look at both the house systems at the same time, and then you can get a very interesting overlap. Okay, is a planet fully situated in a house, or is there some kind of overlap between them? Like for me, I have Sun in the sixth, Sun and Jupiter in the sixth and whole sign, but in the fifth in Placidus. So there's some interconnectedness between my fifth and sixth house. And lo and behold, every single hobby I've ever had has become work. Uh, Not to my detriment. And yeah, so I've been studying astrology for over a decade. I have been r- reading charts, and I recently launched my website a few months ago. And yeah, let me get that up. I'm just gonna uh, stop sharing for a moment, and while I bring that up, and
It's a
then
beautiful website. You've done a really, really great job at
thank
it.
you. So, there we go. And let me just share again. There we go. And there we go. And here is my website. So that is me. Hi. Uh, and so yeah, this is just the landing page is just a little bit about what I feel like represents my practice, the way I conceptualize astrology and the way I use it. So I would say the landing page is pretty bog standard, a bit about myself, a bit about my posts, and
I
then
like the little shout out to the Aries sun there with you on the ram.
so that was actually on my birthday this year. Me and my partner, we went to Kew Gardens here in London.
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and it is absolutely gorgeous. And they have these little rams, and I was just like, I have to, I have to. I felt like I couldn't. I on on the dawn of Aries season, and Aries must sit on a ram.
I mean, it would have been like more appropriate if the picture was you headbutting that ram. But
You know
riding
what?
it into the dawn, I think it is also appropriate.
I think that is a nod to my sun ruling my 10th and midheaven. So, and then I have a couple of this thing is in the way. I want to how do I move it? Oh, there we go. So I have a blog, and so what I talk about my personal experiences is basically like my personal astrology diary, but also me talking about some techniques. Um, and yeah, so this is my blog part of my website, and where I wanted a place where I can really go nuts with the astrological techniques and my observations. I found that just posting on social media, it was a little bit too short. I have a moon in Gemini, and I
Mm.
wanted to kind of go for a ramble. And
Lots of words.
yes, exactly. And I do also have services. So I am open for consultation, and so I do uh, natal consultations, initial consultation follow-ups, and also forecast consultations. So yeah, there I am open for booking. Feel free. Yeah. So that is me.
Thank you. I'll put your website link in the show notes, and anything else you want to share, we can arrange that. But Thanks so much for sharing just your technique and your understanding and your expertise on dispositor trees. It was nice to wander through the dispositor tree Swedish forest with you, orienting ourselves, trying to find trying to find our compass points. So thanks so much, Sammy, just for being my astro buddy and for recording this today. And with that, we will sign off. Any last words?
Thank you for having me. It was an absolute delight. I love disposable trees. I think that they are a really nice, very simple technique that really helps like tidy things up in a bit.
Yeah,
Uh, and I love is the first thing I look at in a chart, and I really recommend more people use them because they're really it's a really nice way to just break things down very quickly.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, um, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, y'all.